some of you have such distorted views of God that you need to deconstruct your faith.
Right.
Like some of my students have been raised with such horrific views of God and what we need to do to secure his smile, that there's no wonder that they're just worn out and just exhausted from it, and they're just ready to chuck the whole thing.
Well, Kevin, it's great to have you here today. Thank you for taking time to come and do this interview with us. And you're kind of known for the beginning of Indelible Grace music. And maybe tell us a little bit about that history and story.
Yeah, sure. So I was working with college students. Actually, I moved down to Nashville to work as a recording engineer. Eventually, it's a longer story, but I started a college Sunday school class at Christ Community Church. You might know Scotty Smith, who's the senior pastor, playing pastor. So I was just a volunteer playing in a Christian rock band and leading the Sunday school class when RUF started a chapter at Vanderbilt. And some of my students would tell me about it a little bit. And I thought, I need to go check this thing out. And so I went up there, had my long perm mullet, and I stuck out like a sore thumb. But I was just amazed. They were singing really substantive songs, some hymns with traditional tunes, a few hymns with new music, and then some other kinds of songs. But they were also, it was like a full-on 30, 40-minute sermon. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like watered down at all. And I thought, wow. I'd been involved in lots of different campus ministries when I was in college in Boston, had tried lots of different ones, but I'd never had seen something with that kind of substance, and there were hundreds of students there. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to look more into that, and eventually went off to seminary at Covenant Seminary, came back in 1995 and started an RUF chapter at Belmont University here in Nashville. And I would have a regular conversation with students. Many of those students had grown up in Christian homes, and we would have this conversation pretty regularly at Bongo Java, the little coffee shop across the street, where they would say, I'm not really sure I'm a Christian. Now, that's not an inappropriate question to ask, right? But as I would dig into, well, tell me why you think that, it often had to do with they were feeling doubts and didn't think that doubts were compatible with faith. And I would often say, well, have you ever read the Psalms or sung the Psalms? And of course, the answer was usually no. The more I pressed in, the more I realized the songs that they were singing were often lying to them about what the normal Christian life felt like. Mm-hmm. It was literally undermining what I was trying to teach them about the gospel. And I thought, we have got to find some better songs to sing. And so we started looking for songs that were more honest about struggle and more explicit about the gospel. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's great for us to be able to It's great to be able to sing to God and tell him how we feel, mm-hmm. but we really need to hear how he feels about us and why. Mm-hmm. And so we found a lot of these old hymn texts, some of which had tunes, but a lot of these old hymn texts we were finding in older hymnals didn't have any tunes attached to them. And so we just started putting tunes and singing them as best we could. And after a few years of that, we decided to make that first CD, came out in 2000, and now we've made 10 of them. And but it's still the same pastoral impulse.
Yeah.
I'm a pastor first, and it's about singing songs that are more honest about struggle, more explicit about the gospel.
Yeah. The audience may be watching and saying, hey, listen, this guy here, he's been working on college campus, I guess, for 20 years now?
30.
30 years as a campus minister with RUF.
RUF here at Belmont University, 30th anniversary is this year.
Yeah, and so they're getting ready to send their kids off to college, and they're thinking, hey, listen, they're going to face some spiritual crisis here. What advice would you give a parent or maybe a church to encourage and help their young people before they enter both either a secular campus or even a Christian campus? Because the crisis can come on either one, correct?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Wow. Well, there's a lot to that, isn't there?
Right, yeah.
And so much of it probably depends on the particular student's background, their story, but also the things that they come across. I will say at a place like Belmont University, which is a Christian university, but not really a conservative one. They really embrace professors from all theological stripes. I find a lot of my students have never heard about liberalism, Christian liberalism, and so they're often better prepared to respond to Mormonism and Jehovah's Witnesses, who they probably rarely will meet, than they are to deal with theological liberalism that they're going to meet a lot. I do think it's helpful. I often recommend high school kids before they go to college read Reason for God by Tim Keller. It's great. But honestly, where the students are more today making sense of God, which is
Yes,
really the
yeah,
prequel to that. And he really wrote that book for people that would say Christianity is what's wrong with the world. It's not. It's no longer just about pluralism, and I'm glad you found something that works for you. No, there's much more hostility, even at a university like Belmont. Not to mention the secular universities. So I think one of the main things I'd say is to try to get as many adults in significant relationships with your kids to where they feel like they have some people they can ask questions and have the questions be taken seriously. What we kind of often say about RUF, what we want to be known for at Belmont, is we take the Bible seriously and we take people and their questions seriously.
Yeah.
And that's why we sing a hymn like, I asked the Lord that I might grow. I don't know if you know that one by John Newton. It's a really good one. J.I. Packer mentions it in Knowing God, and we have a version of it. It's one of our more popular hymns on the Indelible Grace stuff. There's a version of it in the New Getty hymnal as well. And it's basically a hymn about how God is not a vending machine, but he really is a person who deals with people individually. And sometimes he sends trials to draw us to a deeper level of faith. I had one of my campus minister friends say that almost every Christian student I meet with at university is trying to get back to a mountaintop experience they had in middle school camp. And they think that the normal Christian life is the mountaintop. And I think that that's not true. And I think a lot of students are really confused when they go through those seasons. And I think some of it is because of the songs we sing. I really think that the songs we sing express the DNA of our church, of our group. And when students walk in, whether they're our students that grew up or outsiders, we want them to know that this is a place where people struggle and have questions. I really think for a lot of people in our culture today, they think of faith as sort of some temperament where you can always look on the sunny side of life. And they will conclude sometimes that I don't have that. And I think it's important that we break down that misunderstanding and that they know that people of faith, I mean, think about Mary. When she said she's going to have a baby, what did she say? How can this be? I'm still a virgin. She doesn't get shamed for that question. And I think the church definitely needs to be a place where people's questions are taken seriously.
Yeah. I remember Oswald Chambers once said that God will only, he said the mountaintop experiences are really rare. He says God will only give them to you when you know you won't be led by them. I thought that was really, really good.
John Newton has 3 letters on stages of growth. In John Newton's letters, which I highly recommend this book. And he talks about immature Christians, God often gives them extra feelings because they don't have much else. But then a growing Christian is usually marked by conflict. And I think so many of our students don't know that that's normal. They think something's wrong with them when he actually may be trying to grow them up.
They have to learn that life is pretty hard.
Absolutely. You know, we tell our students all the time, these 4 years at university are going to be the best time in your life. But honestly, for a lot of students, it's not. And so not only are they dealing with the trials that are going to come, but they're feeling like something must be wrong with them. That's, again, why we sing hymns about struggle, because it's one thing for us to sing a song by ourselves. It's another thing to sit in a room with hundreds of other students singing a hymn like Come Thou Fount, prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, and say, look around and be like, oh, these other students feel this way too. Maybe I'm not crazy.
And they're going through a lot because I find that ages 18 to 22, such important, monumental decisions are being made in their life about who they may marry, their vocation, and their faith.
Yes, absolutely.
And do you find that the average Christian college student that comes into Belmont now, into RUF, is more prepared than maybe 15 or 20 years ago? Or has it basically all been kind of the same?
No, there's definitely changes. I mean, the biggest change is the major mental health issue we dealt with in the past was depression. That's certainly still present, but anxiety, for sure, off the charts.
Is it really?
Yeah. I mean, the percentage of students, even at a place like where I serve, that's on mental health meds, you wouldn't believe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's one of the reasons my wife went back and got her master's in counseling. Just the kind of issues we're dealing with are much more intense and severe. And, if you haven't read Jonathan Haidt's, The Anxious Generation, highly recommend that. But it'll also be very sobering as we think about how can we care for this generation that's been so affected by social media and by helicopter parents. And thus they haven't really learned about resilience.
That's right.
That's one of the things I think we see.
When tough times come and they turn to something.
Yeah, and it's great to say, preach the gospel to yourself. I say that all the time.
Right.
But if you're in kind of a panic trigger mode, it's hard to connect the dots
Sure
even, and people get so easily triggered. Yeah. So you've got to have relationships where people can feel like they trust you, and
they can weather that storm and help them to kind of grow emotionally and not be so
Yeah.
trigger happy in their response.
Yeah.
And that's tough, though.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that you teach on is defeater beliefs, and
Right.
I'd love for you to be able to
Yeah.
explain that to
Yeah.
what it is, and maybe what are
Yeah.
2 or 3 key defeater beliefs.
Yeah.
Are they always theological, or could they be cultural?
No, absolutely. They're not just theological.
Okay.
Here's the way I heard Tim Keller explain it, and he's got some tapes back when they had cassette tapes
Yes.
on defeater beliefs.
Yeah.
A lot of them are sort of show up in Making Sense of God, though I don't think he names them as defeater beliefs there.
Yeah.
Okay, but a defeater belief is a belief that if you hold to it, it basically neutralizes other truth claims before they even get out of the starting gate. So it'd be like if I tell you, this afternoon before I kind of drove over here, I looked out in my backyard and I saw a fire-breathing dragon.
Yeah.
You're not going to ask me any questions about my truth claim.
Right.
You're not interested in my truth claim. It's ridiculous. And a defeater belief is basically every culture has them. What's interesting is how often different cultures' defeater beliefs contradict each other. But they're generally things people haven't been reasoned into. They're just in the cultural air we breathe. So I'll give you a good example. I think it's still the biggest one is how we treat gay people in the church. And there are many, many students, Christian and otherwise, that would probably say, I don't care if Jesus raised from the dead. I don't want to be a gay-hating bigot. Like the truth claim that you're putting out here is irrelevant if I have to sign on for this. And I think that, I don't think people get that and how
would you
strong that
explain
is.
How would you, in a gracious, full of grace and truth, explain that to a person on that issue there?
Yeah, well, I think with that issue, so I do a seminar every year at the RUF Summer Conference on defeater beliefs. I also have done a sermon series that's on the Belmont RUF podcast on Spotify. Right. Though I actually brought in a friend of mine, Sam Alberry, to do that talk about that issue because he's amazing and also speaks out of his own experience.
Exactly.
Which is really important. How would I engage that issue? Well, Sam's got a book called Why Does God Care Who We Sleep With? Do you know this book?
No, I've listened to a lecture with Sarah McLaughlin on some of those issues.
Yeah. So he goes, he basically, his answer is because God cares about the people who are sleeping. I think so often we start with, especially in the Reformed tradition that I'm in, we start with total depravity instead of with creation. So I think we have to start with affirming the goodness of creation as well as the way our loves are disordered, right? And that it's not a unique issue with sexuality or even one particular kind of sexual issue. But honestly, I don't think, you really need to get to Jesus quickly, and particularly the way his grace and mercy is big enough for all kinds of people. I don't think you're going to engage that issue directly with someone who's not necessarily got the Holy Spirit at work in their life. And so I would try to maybe own the difficulty. There's a guy, Harry Blemires. I don't know if you know him. He wrote a book, 1964, called The Christian Mind. And he was a student of C.S. Lewis. One of the things he says in that book that I've held with me for 30 years now is never defend Christianity like you invented it. Sometimes we have to be okay to say, man, I struggle with this too.
Right.
And I see Paul do that, right? In Romans 9. Have unceasing anguish in my heart when he starts talking about things like predestination, difficult things. He doesn't say, yeah, man, I'm great with this. Right? Jesus weeps over Jerusalem at the end of John's gospel. And in John 6, he talks about no one can come to the Father unless, he's drawn. And yet he weeps over Jerusalem. So I don't know what to make of that. I just have to say there are things that if it was up to me, I would change about Christianity.
Sure.
And
I think when you're authentic like that, I think it tells to the person that you're engaging with, it draws you into them, because if you have an answer for every question they have, a pat answer, then they feel like maybe I'm being sold something here. But if you're honest to say, you know what, I don't get that either.
I think with defeater beliefs, for everyone, there's a theoretical and a personal. So, for instance, if you think about pluralism, like how can there only be one way to God, which is another
Right.
pretty common one. Most people are not pluralists because they've been reasoned into it. Because philosophically, it's pretty self-refuting. There is no the only absolute truth is there is no absolute truth.
Yeah,
Right?
right.
As a philosophical argument, it's not very strong.
Right.
That's not why most people believe it. Most people believe it because of the interactions they've had with Christians,
Yeah.
and particularly arrogant Christians. So you're not going to get to the theoretical unless you live a different way.
Yeah.
One of my professors in seminary in a hospital counseling class, which I'm so grateful I took, he would send us out to meet with patients, not knowing what kind of conversations we were going to have, okay? All we knew was their name, their age, and their condition on like 1 to 10, but not even any other details. And you would knock on the door and ask if they wanted a visit from a chaplain. He would always send us out with this. He'd say, just try to make it easier for the next Christian they meet. And I think so many of our evangelism practices have been about closing the sale
Right.
and sort of pressing people in ways that come across as manipulative, even though Paul said we renounce secret and shameful ways.
Yeah.
We seek to persuade people and be sort of open and honest with
Yeah.
who we are. But I think a lot of our evangelism techniques, we've lost the art of persuasion and improvisation. And that's really what we need to be about today.
Yeah, I was at a church this morning, and it was kind of a famous theologian that you and I both know.
Okay.
And I just asked him about the defeater beliefs, and I said,
Yeah.
because I thought it came across to me just the other day
Yeah.
that could it be that a cultural defeater belief is that Christianity is equated with political partisanship?
Oh, absolutely.
And they can't,
Yeah.
and the unbeliever can't get past that because this is what you
Yeah.
guys are. How
Right.
would you, if someone said that to you,
Yeah.
how would you kind of break that down and show them that it really isn't that way?
I get that a lot, and particularly in the last few years
yeah.
with the way things have become so much more polarized.
Right.
My friend Scott Sauls has a great book called Between the Lines
He's
that's really helpful in sort of what can we commend about both sides on some of these issues, because true Christianity doesn't fit neatly into any political party.
Exactly.
And I think that's hard. I think loyalty is actually a false virtue. It's not a Christian virtue.
Wow.
It depends on what the truth of what your loyalty is, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think these days, probably it's connected to the individualism, but also the loneliness. People want to be part of something bigger, and they just latch on and then try to sort of show the group or influential people how loyal they are without kind of taking their own view shaped by the scriptures. So I think that's affected a lot of people. I think a lot of grandparents will be shocked at the damage they've done with political rhetoric. And there's a generation coming that has really been discouraged and turned away from the faith by it.
Yeah. I was watching an interview with John Lennox one time, and he was talking about the two different parts of the brain.
Yeah.
And the one part of the brain is the one that is where logic is and analysis. And a lot of the questions of the scientific method came forth.
Yeah.
He said, but what I'm finding in this generation, they're not asking those questions
at all.
anymore. They're asking from the other side, why am I here?
Yeah.
What's my purpose? What's my meaning in life?
Yeah. Well, just look at, some of the way social media has trained us, right? You like something or don't like it. It's not about whether it's true. It's how does it make you feel?
Yeah.
Everything is about responding with feelings.
Yeah.
Those aren't unimportant in the Christian understanding. But we do need to engage people with where they are and then begin to bring them along. I think the issue of idolatry is a really important issue because our feelings and what we think are usually connected to what we worship.
Sure.
And I think that's a helpful place if I can get to a student to understand that worship is more basic than what you think and what you feel. And that's always got work in people's lives. That can be a helpful thing. But I think he's right about that. I don't find that I actually do traditional apologetics very much at all. I usually engage people's stories.
Yeah.
It's usually about people's stories. And that's why I said defeater beliefs have a personal and a philosophical aspect. And it's important that we have an embodied Christian community that is showing people there's a different way to live, that the gospel changes the way we do these sort of things. Eugene Peterson talks about the 10 Commandments as the 10 conditions for community. And I love that. Yeah. Like if our Christian communities looked like this, where these things are honored, how attractive that would be.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's so important.
Sure. I think in one of your podcasts, you're talking about the beauty of the gospel, more than just the facts of the gospel. And the
Yeah.
ministry that we're associated with is all about telling the full story,
Yeah.
Creation, fall, rescue, and restoration,
Yeah.
but wanting the people to see the beauty of the story. So how
Yeah.
would you speak into that is so much more important
Yeah.
than just the facts?
Yeah.
And, we used to have the gospel presentations with all the propositional statements.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with those
Yeah.
things, but there's much more to it. And how important
Yeah.
is the beauty of the
Well,
gospel?
I mean, when you look at Jesus, he's remarkably flexible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the woman at the well, very different than Nicodemus. And so I think I've read lots of different books where they'll take one model, one particular encounter Jesus has, and make that their paradigm.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, improvisation
Yeah.
is so much more needed. And to be a good improvisational person, I studied jazz, Berklee
Yeah.
College Music, right?
Okay.
And you really got to listen. I know a lot of people think of jazz as anarchy. It's not at all. It's really about listening. As a matter of fact, we had one class where they'd turn off the lights and you had to play with no music, just listening. Can you end your solo in a way that the next person knows you're ending and can pick up the baton and carry it?
Yeah.
And again, I think that the idea about trying to make it easier for the next Christian they meet, that's very important. That's basically what Paul says to the Corinthians, right?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
planted the seed, Apollos watered, and God gave the growth. I think we need to have more of that kind of humility in how we approach these things. And I think that, that it requires different kind of training.
Right.
I would say you can't just give somebody a canned, here's the 4 steps.
Right.
It's helpful to have that. Sometimes somebody might ask you flat out, how do I become a Christian? You need to have an answer. But in general, you're going to be talking about, like Paul does in Acts 17, where he goes around, it says that he was distressed at all the idols, right?
Yeah.
And then the first thing out of his mouth is what? Men of Athens, I see that in every way you're very religious. He finds something to commend.
Yeah.
Right? And then he builds from there.
Yeah.
I think same thing. A friend of mine, Ted Turnow, has a great article on theological reflection on popular culture is meaningful. And I've gotten a lot of mileage out of this because Belmont is half music or music business majors. So it's a big part of the way I connect with students. And, what he talks about in Psalm 19, the heavens are declaring God's glory. It's not just a static body of evidence for us to say, there must be a God. Look at the order in the creation. Right. No, it's actually preaching at us. That means everybody's hearing it. It says there's nowhere that the voice is not heard, but we're interacting with it. So everything made, even by non-Christians, they're using the stuff that's stamped with meaning. And it's saying something. And often we're trying to erase the meaning that's built into it and make it say something else. We try to make sex say it's just a biological function. But when you have sex, you know it's more than that, right?
Right.
So God's meaning keeps pushing through. And that's true for Christians and non-Christians.
Yeah.
So I think it's helpful for us to kind of point out where we actually need to hear from even non-Christians things that we've blocked out in the church.
Sure.
For instance, the issue of beauty. How oppressive it is, this kind of particular ideas we have about beauty. It affects men and women, right? And yet there's really not much of a Christian critique of it. Most of the best critiques about beauty have come from the non-Christian world. And it's really fascinating and also sad.
Yeah.
But, I find a lot of people sort of have put up this wall and sort of not listening or engaging in the secular world. But we believe in general revelation.
Sure.
We believe, in common grace. And I think it's really important to see where people are already becoming dissatisfied and where they're already in touch with longings and be able to connect to those things.
Yeah. The power of music in the gospel because of how it's a different language that people hear sometimes. And sometimes we want to separate, well, we got the worship service here and now we have the preaching of the word.
Yeah.
So much is happening in a worship service. Could you speak to that?
Yeah. Well, I'm a big guy for music.
Yeah.
I think worship is formative, like it or not. And again, that's not just the singing. But once you get that, once you realize the songs you're singing are communicating something about what you value and what the normal Christian life feels like, I think you will attend to the songs that you're singing with your people more and more. And I hope that will be a helpful experience. Again, I think a lot of non-Christians and even a lot of students that grow up in the church feel like faith is some sort of temperament where some people just have this ability to always be buoyant and happy. And I think that some of the songs we sing do that. I've had so many students tell me about being in a big, kind of conference hall where all the lights are down, the smoke and everything's going, and everybody's got their eyes closed and they're praising God, and they open their eyes and they look around like, I'm not feeling it.
Yeah.
And how really isolating that feels. And then for a lot of them, it becomes like a house of cards. Like, what else have I felt that isn't maybe real?
Yeah.
There's a lot of other narratives out there to explain away your conversion experience,
Sure.
to explain away a lot of things. Sometimes I talk about, I don't know, I might get in trouble for saying this, the Reformed fundamentalist overreach.
Sure.
Now, I'm Reformed,
Yeah.
okay? But I think that sometimes we give the impression to our kids that if you believe the Bible, that you know everything about everything.
That's right.
And sometimes you send these kids off to college and they learn things that maybe are different than what they've taught, and then they begin to really wonder, what else did you tell me
That
isn't necessarily
so
true?
Right.
I remember a student years and years ago who grew up here in Nashville at a Christian school being told that Buddhists, you got to watch out for them. What do you think happened when she went to Boston University freshman year and her roommate's a Buddhist who's the nicest person, better than all the catty Christian girls she grew up with?
Right.
And begins to wonder, what else did these people tell me that
Yeah.
wasn't true? And she's beginning to deconstruct her faith. And the deconstruction issue is a big deal.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of responsibility for it in the church, I think, because of the way we've misrepresented what Christianity is.
Now, that probably hasn't been addressed as much as kind of not condemning the person that's going through,
Yeah.
but maybe some of the causes that we have to
Yeah.
look internally ourselves.
Yeah.
That maybe we're a part of the problem.
You know what Os Guinness said one time in his
Yeah, I
book?
love Os,
He's got that book on doubt.
Yeah.
And he said, some of you have such distorted views of God that you need to deconstruct your faith. Right?
Yeah,
This is true.
Right.
Like, some of my students have been raised with such horrific views of God and what we need to do to secure his smile that it's no wonder that they're just worn out and just exhausted from it, and they're just ready to chuck the whole thing. So I think still the first thing people need to understand is the kindness of God, the mercy of God. Isn't that what Paul says in Romans 2? It's the kindness and mercy of God that's designed to bring you to repentance.
Yeah.
Or like Hebrews says, we must believe that God exists and he rewards those who will come to him. You have to understand God's grace and mercy first. And that's what Christians need and non-Christians need, which is one of the reasons I love to preach the gospel, is I don't have to figure out where they're at. Sometimes it's really hard to know.
Right.
A student that's grown up in the church, are they struggling with doubt? Are they maybe never were a Christian? Maybe they're on the way to becoming a Christian. Maybe they're on the way away from God and the gospel. But wherever they're at, it's the gospel that they need. And they need to be convinced of the gospel by the scriptures.
Sure.
So that in RUF, we have three things that we really hope a student gets. We hope they understand the scripture, how to read it, why we can trust it, justification by faith alone, and sanctification, how to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a good basis.
Yeah. Talking about your friend that met this Buddhist girl was nice.
Yeah.
I remember Tim Keller saying, when you come to New York City, you're going to find people that are kinder and more gracious
Yeah.
and more hospitable than you are, and
Yes.
they don't know Jesus.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so seeing the image of God in
Yeah.
other people can
Yeah.
surpass us in many areas.
Yes. And depending on how you've prepared your kids for that experience will have a lot to do with how they handle it.
Yeah.
Because that is absolutely going to happen.
Yeah.
And not just there, now with social media and TikTok, like they're inhabiting a world that we don't even know about. I remember my daughter posted in our little family group chat, and she's my last one who's still in college. She's a senior now. She posted a picture of a guy that she met at a nightclub, and my two boys who are older than her, both of them are like, oh my gosh, you know, who? And my wife and I are like, oh, who is this person?
Yeah.
He's this YouTube streamer, has millions and millions
Yeah.
of streams.
Yeah.
One of the most influential people. Every one of our college students, every one of our high school students would know who this person is. And me and my wife have never heard of him. And I guarantee you, the voices that are most important in your kids' lives, you probably have no idea who they are.
That's probably true.
And do you have a relationship with them where they would share with you and interact with you about it? Or will you just be condemning?
Yeah.
That is so important.
I think it's a lesson.
Commend first. What can commend first?
And I probably am better at that now than I was earlier in life, you know?
Yeah,
A lot more open
yeah.
and understanding.
So often the culture war takes precedent over the spiritual war.
Yeah, it really does.
And it's a challenge, right? Because I've got kids. I know what it's like to be bombarded with messages that I think are really harmful. But if I just overreact, I think another defeater belief is the more enthusiastic you are in your defense of the faith, the more they suspect that you're insecure. The most secure people are just pretty comfortable in their own skin. And the louder we defend Christianity, it almost seems to undermine people believing that we really believe it.
Yeah, I talk sometimes that, as far as sharing the gospel, sometimes some people that are introverts say, man, I'm just at a disadvantage. But I say, no, it can be your advantage because
yeah.
you provide a safe place for that person. You may not know all the answers. That is not always bad.
No.
Yeah, and,
I like to tell my students, we want to give a response to honest questions. We don't have answers.
Right.
Like I told you, there's a lot of things I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But one of the things we do, we have a regular, every week, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. It's a dead hour on class. There's no classes at Belmont. Come ask questions about anything you want.
Really?
Yeah. Still do that. It's kind of like what Keller would do after the service.
Services, right.
Until he got so popular. Yeah, you know why he had to quit doing that? It's because all the evangelicals would come and want him to sign their books. And so he had to finally shut that down.
Yeah.
But he still would say that that was one of his favorite experiences in ministry. Yeah. And I love doing that. Again, it's part about improvisation.
Sure.
And even if students come and don't have questions, it expresses the DNA of our group that questions are welcomed.
Yeah.
And so few churches do that sort of thing, unfortunately.
Yeah, in his Reason for God video series covered it. It wasn't so much always the content of how he answered the question. It was his spirit.
Yeah.
You have agnostics, you have atheists, the spirit. And when we did something that was wrong, he said, we have to own that or something like that.
Absolutely. And also just listening to people.
Yeah.
You know that line Francis Schaeffer said, if he had an hour to spend with somebody, and that was all he knew he was ever going to see them, maybe on an airplane, he said, I'd spend 50 minutes asking them questions about what they believe, maybe the last 5 or 10 minutes, maybe formulating some kind of response. Wow. I don't think many Christians do that. I think we listen far enough till we know here's where I can sneak in the gospel. Yeah. And we don't really listen.
Right.
The guy that started RUF, I love this, I tell my students this all the time. He said the key to ministry is being insatiably curious about God's work in another person's life. Whether they're Christians or not. Right. That's what I get to do every day. I get to ask students questions. They may not know it's about God's work in their life.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
Being here. It's been wonderful. God bless you in your work
going
forward.
Thank you.